Okay, and welcome everybody. My name is Jen Tidwell, also known as Dark Wiccan or DW, the host of the Earp Fiction Addiction. That is the podcast dedicated entirely to Winona Earp fan fiction. This is Earp Fiction Addiction Live, coming at you from across the United States and possibly abroad. It is wonderful that you were all able to join us today. I am hugely excited to share these authors with you this afternoon, early evening, or early morning, depending on where you are in the world. And I know that this is going to be a lot of fun. And just remember that this is that nobody here are professionals, except maybe me. So no one here is professional. Everyone is reading their own work. So be kind, be generous, and be listening, because I'm sure that this is going to be a fantastic, fantastic read. So up first is the author badartndadjokes, also known as Liam. So Liam, I'm going to turn the table over to you, and welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry if my voice sounds so awful, but we're going to go ahead and go. So if you haven't read my one actual multi-chapter thing, it's called My Buckle Makes Impressions, in brackets, on the inside of your thighs. This is from the upcoming 4th chapter that I'm halfway through writing. So it starts out with a song that I'm sure half of you have never even heard of, but it's called Oklahoma Breakdown by Stony LaRue. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. It has the words in it, but I'm just going to start reading from the top. The radio plays softly from its perch on the open window. A cool early summer breeze billows the curtains back and ruffles Nicole's already wrinkled open flannel shirt every time she passes in front of it. She can hear Waverly's soft steps on the stairs behind her, but she doesn't react. She knows she'll feel cold hands wrap around her stomach and warm lips pressed into her shoulder blade in only a matter of seconds, and wants to relish in the quiet of Waverly's footsteps on the worn wood. Sure enough, after a couple of seconds, she feels Waverly's arms wrap around her and warm kisses are dotted along her shoulder. She hums, tilting her head to the side to find Waverly's lips with her own. It's minty is the first thing she notices as Waverly's tongue traces the seam of her lips, which means the girl's brushed her teeth and been awake for quite a while. When they pull away, Waverly sings the next line of the song, and she feels a smile stretch across her cheeks. Spinning the girl in her arms around the kitchen, it feels like her heart could burst from the sheer amount of love that coats them. I love you. Did you know that? She asks, breathless. They've come to a stop in their dance. Waverly's wrist hang from
Uh-oh, looks like we have lost Liam's connection. We're going to give them a second to try to reconnect.
Not Waverly's, and a warm feeling spreads across her chest. Would 15-year-old Nicole ever think that she'd be dancing her kitchen with the love of her life at 25? Would she have anticipated half the town asking her when she'd pop the question every time they see her? Would she have pictured a life with nothing other than winning a junior rodeo competition in the forefront of her mind? No. She doesn't think she would have ever thought of this life. It had started small, the introduction of the Earps into her life. She barely remembers a time when she wasn't altogether consumed with the thoughts of these girls and their disaster-filled, dastardly, incredible ways. Warm summers and windy winters, and space-filled falls all wound together to crush into her chest with the memories of them breaking down her walls and hurling her through her adolescence. No one had warned her, after all. She buys a ring the week before the Nationals in Guthrie. It presses against her leg through her starched jeans, and every time she can't feel it, anxiety races through her skin. Waverly catches her acting like a damn loon every time and gives her a look, and it takes everything in her not to ask right then. Nationals come in like a dust off the wind, and suddenly, she knows when to ask. It's a beautiful day in Guthrie, the announcer booms over the loudspeakers. A sunny 85 degrees out, and we're starting with team roping in 15 minutes. She takes a deep breath of the hot air, hand combing back the already damp curls trapped by her hat against her forehead. The hat itself at least relieves the blunt force of the sun on her face, but does little to stem the pressure of the hangover thudding through her temples. There's a feather tucked into the band from a kid in the crowd, and she smiles fondly when she looks up to see most of the young children in the stands waving at her from where she rests on her horse to the side of the arena. Her hand raises in an idle wave to their delight. The announcer booms the scores to beat from last week's rodeo in Arcadia. Her and Dolls have the other teams beat by 10 seconds across all boards, and she lazily lets her mind wander to other ways they can shave a couple seconds off, while her eyes track along the inhabitants of the bleachers. Her perch on Calamity Jane, a dark red paint horse, gives her enough reach that she can see over the gates and into the corral behind the judge's stand. Nicole lets her eyes wander until she sees who she's looking for, Waverly Earp, sitting astride her enormous black thoroughbred, leading through practiced holes slowly. A grin spreads across her lips without her noticing. Shouts come from her left, and when she looks over, she's not really amazed to see that it belongs to the Bronc Riders, mostly heralded by their de facto leader, Champ Hardy, as they hype themselves up. Several of them compete in the team roping rounds with her, and she's not all that fond of their company, least of all Champ. He's still a thorn in her side, but they're adults now, even if he doesn't act like it, so she just ignores him in favor of looking over at Waverly. And now, she's about to ask that girl, the girl she loves, to marry her as soon as she crushes him in finals, and she doesn't feel a lick of remorse. Dolls whistles to catch her attention, and she winks when Waverly catches her eye. It still brings a blush to her cheeks, even after all these years, and warmth again settles in her chest at the sight. Team roping and then steer wrestling, and as soon as they hand her that trophy, Sheriff Nedley is going to hand her the mic, and she's going to propose to the girl that she loves in the middle of the lazy arena. Rolls a strand of hair back behind her ear as Gus McCready and a police officer get the steer ready in the chute. Pete winds his rope back and forth round the saddle horn, dallying it as they wait for the steer to be ready. All competitive spirit aside, she hopes he remembers to unwind it before he tries to lasso the steer, or he's bound to fall short and fall off his horse. The whistle blows, and Pete's horse takes off before the steer is even out of the chute. An automatic 10-second penalty gets added to the board, and a resounding groan comes from Champ's group. It takes Pete a ridiculous amount of time before he's got a loop over both horns, and he finally dallies it to his horn before riding to the left and towing the steer with him so Bryce can heel both of the steer's hind legs. Bryce's horse refuses to face Pete's, and they sit in a standoff for long enough that the crowd starts making anxious sounds. The round isn't complete until they both face the other, steer strung between them, and they know that. She knows they know it, knows they learned a lesson on it together when they were kids. Finally, Bryce's horse stills and the clock stops. The flagman signals the end of their run, and when Nicole looks back up, the clock is ended in a poor 21 seconds, which is probably one of the worst times she's ever seen for adult team roping. She knows her and Dolls have never been anywhere over 13 seconds, knows they're at the top of their league, knows they have a far greater chance of winning than Pete and Bryce ever did. It doesn't quell her fear. The knowledge and the confidence she typically has in herself feels lacking in comparison to the anxiety that's wedged its way between her spine and the muscle pounding that makes up her heart. As the boys pass them, she calls out, "How's the cattle?" Pete rolls his eyes so hard she's fairly sure he's going to topple over backwards off his horse. "Oh, they're great, hot, just freaking dandy." Dolls chuckles behind her, and she feels a little bit of panic slip off her shoulders. Sheriff Nedley starts to lead them down to the chutes. "Are you into bulldog after this, Hot?" Nedley asks as he leads them through. She knows he's well aware that she is, but the question reminds her so vividly of being an under 14 and asking the sheriff about his glory days wrestling steers and being a hazer. She nods, gulping down her half a bottle of lukewarm water that one of the flankmen tosses to her. "Yes, sir." Nicole manages around a mouthful of water. She nearly chokes as she catches Waverly's eye over the head of the Bronc boys before the bleachers. The girl has a huge sign in her hand that reads, "Redheads do it better," and Nicole feels her heart flood with love at the sight, even if she does roll her eyes at the phrase. Winona stands to Waverly's left, and although there's a semi-permanent look of discomfort on her face, she knows they're both there to support her. Their run goes by in a rush. She vaguely remembers watching the steer break from the chute. The whistle blows and her horse starts across the barrier. Her arm, entirely through years of muscle memory, winds up and swings her rope around. And then she misses. She misses. But, like a charm, her arm whips back, and the line fishes and twists in the air and pulls taut against the steer's horns. A perfect catch. She hurries to dally the rest of the rope around the horn of her saddle, and Calamity skids to a stop as Dolls ropes the steer's hind feet. They both pull tight and face each other, and the flagman signals out of the corner of her eye. 6 seconds. 6 seconds. A personal best, for both of them, for purgatory, for the state of fucking Oklahoma. Dolls lets out a loud whoop in front of her, and her legs almost give out from her standing perch on Calamity. The sheriff nods at her from his post by the chutes, waving them off the side of the arena. She kicks gently at Calamity's flank and watches Dolls throw his head back with laughter when his horse starts dancing out of the arena. Waverly starts running at them before she's had a chance to dismount, and she almost throws herself from the saddle in an attempt to wrap the girl around in her arms. Once she finally does, she swings the girl around and around as Waverly kisses her. She thought the rush from their time was something that she'd never get enough of, but she was wrong. It's this kiss, this feeling, this girl in her arms, this love that she has for someone she never expected. This is something she'll never run out of. The kiss only ends when Winona shouts behind them. Dawes has her pulled up in his arms and is swinging her around in a manner not unlike the one that she was swinging Waverly. Once they press their lips together a few more times, Waverly pulls back and grins up at Nicole. She starts twirling a strand of hair around her finger coyly as the smile on her face grows brighter. "You planning to do anything with all that money, cowboy?" Waverly asks, a blush rising to her cheeks at the look that Nicole gives her. Her eyes roll of their own volition. And that is all I have. Maybe I'll write more later.
Liam, that's awesome.
Heck yeah.
That was so fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you.
Lots of woohoos. Yes, loved it. Great job.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That was nerve-wracking.
You were fantastic, my friend. That was
thank you. Thank you.
That was really terrific. Okay, I'm going to take the spotlight off of you, and I'm going to move along to our next reader here. Okay, folks, coming up next is the author jeepgrrl, and I am very excited to hear what she has to share with us today. So jeepgrrl, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Liam, that was amazing. I loved that. My story is a AU story, and it's just kind of how Nicole and Waverly meet, my take on it. So it's entitled A Little Dirt, and it goes like this. Day 5 and more workers came walking through the front door. Tall, short, heavy, skinny, but all of them wearing heavy, muddy boots that left a trail of dirt across Shorty's freshly mopped hardwood floor. Waverly huffed as she asked herself again whose idea it was to renovate Shorty's. She tossed her bar rag on the bar. Okay, so she had agreed to it. But now that she was co-owner of the establishment with her Aunt Gus, they had to agree on all big undertakings. And rewiring all the electric to bring it up to code, not to mention installing new lights, fixtures, and plumbing in the men's restroom, was quite a big undertaking. What seemed to make matters worse was the fact that each one of these guys would hang around after the workday was over for drinks, pool, darts, the occasional arm wrestling challenge, and they all had the worst taste in music. And Waverly knew there was good music on that jukebox. Maybe she'd make her own selections later before they got started. They did tip good, though. She wasn't complaining, and she could endure the playful flirting as long as it didn't get too far out of hand. However, she had made a promise to slap the first one to grope her. Thankfully, that hadn't happened. They were all very respectful. It was surprising and refreshing, and she was certainly used to the language. She laughed a little when she thought about how her sister could probably teach them a thing or two. "Excuse me, miss." Waverly reached for her dish towel before answering. "Yeah, can I—" Her voice cut off as she turned to answer. It was a woman, a gorgeous woman, a tall, red-headed, gorgeous woman. Oh my, with a tool belt hanging low on her hips, a gray plaid shirt rolled to the elbows and unbuttoned, showing off a sweaty, dirty tank top that was clinging to a sculpted torso. Waverly tried to speak. "Have you? I mean, help you? Can I help you?" The woman smiled, and the brunette thought she would just melt into the floor then and there. Those dimples. Pull it together, Waves. "I hope so. I'm looking for the main breaker box for the bar. Do you know where it might be?" Waverly could have swooned as the tall woman literally sauntered her way to the bar. They both knew it, too. The brunette bit her lip as her mind tried to concentrate on the words spilling out across those plump, kissable lips that were now so close. God, she smells good, like vanilla and sweat. She felt the heat rising to her cheeks as those brown eyes in front of her gave her a quick once-over. The woman gave an appreciative smile. "Actually, there are two that I know of." "Yeah?" The redhead leaned on the bar, looking like a lion getting ready to pounce on its prey. So cocky. Waverly would have quickly been turned off had it been anyone else, but she found it quite attractive. In fact, downright sexy. You want to show me? Oh, the things Waverly wanted to show her. Waverly was about to answer when a gruff voice from the basement yelled up, "Hot! Quit flirting with the lady and get down here." Chestnut eyes never broke contact with the hazel in front of her. "I'll be right there, Lonnie." The redhead straightened to her full 5'10" frame and reached a hand out. "I'm Nicole, Nicole Hot." Waverly's hand fit perfect inside the soft but calloused hand of this beautiful Nicole Hot, whose name described her perfectly. Waverly Earp. "So I'm working until 5. Want to grab a drink after?" Waverly couldn't say no if she wanted to, and she didn't want to. However, her shift didn't end until 8. "I would love to, like to, but..." Nicole stood still, waiting on the letdown. How could she hope a beautiful woman like Waverly Earp would be single, let alone interested in her? "I'm working until 8 tonight." "Well then, how about 8:30? Coffee, dinner, conversation?" Nicole's voice dropped and Waverly swallowed hard. "Or whatever the night may bring." Waverly felt the butterflies dancing in her tummy. On one condition. Those dimples again. This woman knew the power she was wielding, and Waverly used all her inner strength to summon up her own courage to retaliate. She leaned onto the bar, knowing that her low-cut shirt was giving the redhead a spectacular view of her cleavage, which the woman quickly took advantage of, however, not quick enough. Waverly just grinned knowingly. Busted. Nicole showed no remorse. "Name it." Waverly's eyes drifted down to Nicole's lips and back up. The redhead vowed to meet this condition if it killed her. "Play me one good song on that jukebox." Nicole wasn't expecting that. Waverly was beautiful, anyone could see that, but she was different than anyone Nicole had ever met. It caused her heart to race and dreams come to life. Done. Both women smiled as Nicole reached in her pocket for a quarter. "Hot, come on, man. We're going to need those fuses." "I'm coming." She grinned at Waverly and spoke low. "Well, you know." Waverly's eyes raked over the long frame in front of her that was now walking toward the jukebox. What was it about a tool belt? Of course, she was pretty sure Nicole Hot would look sexy in a potato sack. She watched as the taller woman seemed to scan the selections. She was taking this serious, and Waverly liked it. With one look over her shoulder, Nicole turned and dropped the coin in. Her long fingers reached out and selected the corresponding letter and numbers that would play her choice. She smiled before disappearing down the steps to the basement. Waverly heard the beginning notes of the song and immediately knew what it was. Her heart leaped in her chest. It wasn't just a good song. It was a great song, and she couldn't stop the smile that stretched across her face. The words rang out, and she found herself singing along as she thought about the last 20 minutes. "I've been waiting for a girl like you to come into my life." Funny how things can change so quickly. She had gone to cursing muddy boots to being very thankful that they had made the choice to renovate. What's the little dirt anyway? The end.
Oh, Jeep Girl, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm really looking forward to now, is that the first part of a story you said?
Yeah, I think it was just going to be like a one shot. So I've had some people interested to hear more of that. So maybe we'll see.
I think everyone in here is interested to hear more. And I just got to say, I love your voice. You've got a fantastic, smooth Southern accent happening there.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. All righty. Well, that was the fantastic Jeep Girl. We're going to move right along here to our next participant, which is the author, Aya Dreamer. So, Aya, the floor is yours.
Hi. So, how do I explain this story? Hold on. Give me a second.
Speak up a little bit more into your mic there, Aya.
Okay. So, basically, the story is already published, and there are a few chapters already published, and I'm going to read the summary because it's going to explain it better than I can, and then I'm going to start reading it. Okay. Nicole and Waverly had issues while they were dating. Issues that involved them distancing each other and not talking for a few months. Issues that involved fighting most of the relationship. Waverly tries, she tries so hard to get Nicole to be a part of her life, even just as a friend. She just wants Nicole to be there because she loves her, she always did. And now I'm going to start reading the chapter. Nicole and Waverly had been best friends ever since they were 12. Now they are both 19, and Waverly figured out that she got feelings for Nicole as more than a friend, just a few nights before prom, when Nicole and her weren't together, but it was just as friends.
Night, all night perfectly. She knows that they will slow dance together at prom, but just as friends, and Waverly believed that this moment will be perfect for confessing her feelings for Nicole, because she's not going to run away, that's for sure. They were part of each other's life for so long, and she didn't think things would go this bad. They didn't, for a while. Waverly and Nicole went out on a few dates together. They went really good. The relationship was better than what they both expected. A few months passed and they moved in together. That was something that they planned a long time before they even knew about how they feel about each other. This is just a best friend thing. They were even thinking of it as they were both 16 and they thought it would be so cool to live together. They would carry on with each other's lives and still be just as close. It just sounds perfect. Lately, every night when Nicole and Waverly went to bed, someone left asleep in the living room. The fights when Nicole came back home drunk were always messy. Nicole yelled at Waverly after she was trying to take care of her. It happened so often now that Waverly didn't even bother trying anymore. But it hurt her to see her best friend wait, her best friend like this. Nicole has a stable job, she's getting good money, but Waverly doesn't understand why she's going out to drink almost every night this week. It usually starts when Nicole comes inside the house, and Waverly is worried. But why? Didn't understand Nicole didn't answer any of her calls back. She was drinking and ignoring her again. Nicole, hey, why didn't you return any of my calls? Waverly approached Nicole. That smelled of alcohol and a lot of it. Waverly got an idea of what's about to happen next. Oh, you called me? Sorry, Waves, I didn't get a call at all. No idea what you want from me. Nicole said as she tried to understand what Waverly even wants from her. She didn't do anything bad. She just went out for drinks. Oh my God, you're drunk again? Really, Nicole? Seriously? Waverly was furious. She talked to Nicole just a few days ago about this whole situation when she was sober and Nicole made a promise that she would drink less. But all that happened was that she just drank more. Babe, loosen up, try to. I'm not harming anyone. Nicole went toward Waverly and tried to hug her, but Waverly didn't hug her back. She didn't think she can give Nicole any hug like this, and that she's even worthy of a hug. No, she doesn't think she's worthy of any affection from her right now. A promise was broken by Nicole, and it's not the first time. Waverly and Nicole are sitting in the living room and watching TV together. That's the moment Waverly brings up her thoughts to Nicole. Nicole, I'm sick of you coming back home drunk. I can't take this anymore. If it's because you're not happy with the fact that we're dating, I can see it very well. Everything changed since this moment I asked you to be my girlfriend. I feel like you're just pitying me, and that's why you started dating me. Is that true? Be honest with me, please. Waverly said that she looked deep into her girlfriend's eyes. She was so scared to look at her, but she couldn't take her eyes off of her. I'm sorry, Waverly. I try so hard for you because I know about your feelings and how much you care for me. as more than a friend, but I can't. We're living together for what, 6 months? And we never slept together. We kissed before, but I know that I don't want to ruin a friendship of such a long time, but also by also sleeping together. I'm trying to be more than a friend, your girlfriend, but I'm sorry, you will always be just a friend, but just my best friend, Waverly. Nicole meant every single word, and Waverly knew it. It scared her how fast things change, and now Nicole isn't the same Nicole anymore. Yeah, that was the answer I saw coming. I'm hurt, obviously, but I will always be your best friend, Nicole. You know it. You're my soulmate, and I can't let you go. We are still living together, but for now, we are still sleeping in separate beds. I can't even see you right now. Waverly said that she went upstairs to the room that just a while ago she shared with Nicole. She closed the door, and just a few seconds later, she fell against the door and teared up. What has she ever done to deserve this? She got the most perfect girl right there, but of course she had to ruin everything by having feelings for her. Fuck, it feels so stupid. Falling in love with Nicole was something that she couldn't control, but she regretted it now because it hurts so bad. After this day, Nicole didn't come home drunk as much as she used to before. She tried for Waverly and she enjoyed the time together the most when she was sober. Nicole and Waverly were hanging out with Rosita, Waverly's friend. She didn't know how things are between closed doors. She always thought that the relationship is perfect. She didn't even dare thinking otherwise. They're the Waverly and Nicole, the best friends. Rosita always knew how Waverly feels about Nicole, even though she never said anything. It was in the way she talks about her, in the way she looked at her, the way she holds her. Everyone but Waverly knew. Was it hard to bring up the question? How is it going between the two of you? She said as she gestured to Nicole and Waverly. Waverly wasn't sure what to say. Things were complicated. She knew that Nicole and her aren't technically dating anymore. They're still living together, but all that happens is just glancing at each other every day. Saying good morning and a hug is something that comes only once in a while when it's coming from Nicole. Waverly doesn't want to push her into anything. She knows how she's feeling. No one can read Nicole as good as Waverly. So, Nicole, how are we doing? Want to tell her? Waverly questioned her. She thought she has the right to tell everything because she can explain it, and she wanted to hear her point of view. Nicole was frustrated and scared. She didn't get a chance to think this all through, and now she needs to tell her thoughts to Waverly in front of her as a friend as well. She wishes she wasn't sober right now. It could have been easier like this. Well, Rosita, this is a lot to say, but Waverly and I are still living together. However, we never got to sit this through and have this conversation face to face. So we are still close friends, but I'm not Waverly's girlfriend anymore. I'm sorry, Waves. I'm so sorry. Nicole was tearing up and she couldn't look at her best friend eyes anymore. She saw her eyes tearing up. It hurt her more than anything to see her like this. Rosita was shocked. She wasn't expecting this to happen and she felt bad for even questioning them.
Yeah.
Okay. She saw how this situation just turned downhill and now they are both hurt. She didn't know how to react. I'm so sorry for even asking this, but are you two okay? I feel bad. I'm so sorry. Rosita reached for Waverly's hand that was trembling now. Waverly looked at her, and all that Rosita wanted to do right now is make all the hurt that's in her eyes to go away. Waverly mouthed to Rosita, "Please stay." Waverly lifted Nicole's chin with her other hand because she knew Nicole would look away after she would say all these words. Nicole, I already had this scenario in my head going over and over again. I never imagined it to hurt this bad. I can't lose you. I can't. I don't know how long it will take me to get over you and my feelings for you. But can you please give me time? I need you to stay here with me through this. You're still my best friend, my world and my soulmate. Please don't leave me just because of how I need some time. Nicole couldn't stop crying after hearing all these words. Waverly said, She needed a few seconds to think of what to say, but she was having a hard time saying her thoughts out loud. When she stopped crying, she said, Waves, I'm not leaving you. You're my best friend, and I know how scared you are. I can tell, but I'm here and I stay. I will be here when you find a new girlfriend, support you through it all. I will have to be the first to know her though, because she will have to be approved by me. If she breaks your heart, I will have to kill her. Waverly smiled a little through her tears as Nicole kept talking. No one knows me better than you. No one will ever be able to replace you, my soulmate. I can't be myself without you. I will give you all the time that you need, I promise. It's been a year since Waverly and Nicole broke up. Waverly found a girlfriend and Nicole was still single. Nicole was happy for Waverly. Her happiness makes her happy. Today is a special day. Waverly is going to propose to her girlfriend, Rachel, and Nicole was there to help Waverly through this day. Nicole gave space to Waverly as she moved on from the feelings she had for her. Yet one day it hit her. She feels the same way. But it's too late now. Waverly is about to marry someone that's not her. And it's all her fault for not feeling the same way at the right time. The timing was bad. Everything is going to change from now. And now the person that's hurt more is Nicole. She needs to move on from Waverly. And for once, she knows how Waverly felt. Nicole feels bad for making her best friend hurt this much. Waverly was next to Nicole and freaking out over the proposal that's about to happen any minute now. And she saw Nicole spacing out and ask her, hey, what's up? You need to keep up with me. Are you okay? Nicole couldn't hide the feeling she has for Waverly anymore. She has to tell her the truth. Waverly, I'm sorry. I can't be here. I have feelings for you, and it hurts me to know I'm not the one you're going to marry. Waverly was shocked. The time was so wrong with Nicole having feelings for her. With her shit luck, it's nothing new for her. She could never have something good at the right timing. Nicole, it's too late. You had your chance back then, and you're not going to have another chance. I'm sorry. Nicole teared up at Waverly's words and decided that she can't handle being with Waverly anymore. She wasn't even sure she can be a best friend anymore. It hurt her, but it hurt her more that she can't have her Waverly the way she wants to. I can't be here, Waverly. I can't. I'm not sure if I'm even going to be able to be at your wedding day. I am not even sure if I can stay your best friend. Don't wait for me to come back to you because I'm not sure I will come back. Goodbye. Waverly tried to stop Nicole with no luck. She tried calling her 1,000 times, but she didn't return any of her calls. Waverly just lost her best friends, maybe for the rest of their life. It's Waverly's wedding day. Waverly is standing next to her soon-to-be wife, Rachel, and she can't help but look into someone in the crowd. She's looking for Nicole and she can't find her. She's gone, as best friend. Her soulmate is gone and she's not coming back. Waverly tried so hard, but Nicole isn't a part of her life anymore. It's over. The end. And you can read more because there are more parts, but no one knows how it's going to end up. I'm done.
So it's the end of this chapter. The story continues
Yes.
on. Okay. So for
Yeah,
everyone
it's
whose
not
heart
done.
you just ripped out, there's the possibility that it's gonna get a band-aid in the end. You don't have to tell us. Just there's a
No.
possibility. There's a possibility.
No.
No?
I'm going to keep going. It's something that I really want to keep writing.
No, I know you're going to keep writing. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is that for everyone whose heart is breaking right now because of the end of this chapter, there's a possibility that things will turn around in the storytelling. Or are you gonna keep it this?
I love the Angus, so nobody knows how long it's gonna take.
You just have to see. Okay, all right. Okay, that's fair. Well, thank you so much, Aya, for sharing that story with us. And I'm sure that once you finish up here, make sure that you provide a link on your Twitter so that everyone who wants to know what the heck happens next is able to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so moving right along to the next author, the last author of the 7 o'clock hour here is the fantastic Orange 17, known here in the chat as Orange. Their writing handle on AO3 is Orange 17, and you can follow them on Twitter at Dubious Orange 17. You can clarify that when you're talking. So I'm going to take you off of mute, and Orange, the floor is yours, my friend.
I'm in pain. I mean, I feel like I'm recovering from hearing that pick. So it's probably a good thing that I picked something a little lighthearted to follow that. Some of my friends really wanted me to read part of what's called nickname Truck Stop. Real name, I'm wishing you could stay a little longer. But there's a scene in there that's going to be much better if I don't read it aloud to you all. So I encourage you to go read that on your own and not hear it from me. Instead, I'm going, again, a little levity, hopefully. So I'm reading Canines. We'll see how far along through I get in my time. So if you have a cuddly friend so that you can grab, or a nice drink to make you feel nice and warm and cuddly, go ahead and grab that and I will start reading. Waverly hummed as her feet trod the familiar path from the kennels to the front desk. Her heart clenched as she saw most of the runs occupied, sad eyes following her as she made her way through. She stopped outside the one at the end, closest to the front door in the visitor area. Though all the animals here had managed to worm their way into her heart, she had a particular soft spot for this black lab. The brown eyes of the nearly year-old pup widened, and her tail wagged happily at Waverly. The gangly dog enthusiastically shifted, about to stumble to her feet when Waverly stopped her in her tracks. "It's okay, girl," she cooed as she lifted the latch to the run. "You stay here, or stay there. I'll come to you." The dog stilled at her voice, weight lowering, the tail picking up speed as Waverly stepped inside the chain-link fence. But the pup that the other volunteers had christened Calamity Jane couldn't seem to help herself as Waverly stepped closer. The black lab stumbled as she tried to hop to her feet, nearly catching herself before she tumbled face first onto the concrete floor. Before Calamity Jane could try to stand again, Waverly hurried to her side and dropped to her knees, her heart breaking as she ran her hands through the dog's thick black fur. "Aw, are you okay?" Waverly asked. "I told you I was coming. One of these days you'll learn, huh, girl?" Of all the animals here, Waverly could never have imagined that they would have a cuddly, friendly, sweet black lab that would never find a home. Her throat thickened, remembering the day that the vet brought the tiny black lab puppy to the shelter. The dog was the casualty of some uninformed breeding by some locals who first brought her to the vet after noticing she had more trouble moving than the rest of the pups in her litter. Their concern for Calamity Jane vanished after the vet found cerebral hypoplasia to be the cause. Though the dog was cognitively fine, her shortened cerebrum would hinder her motor skills for her entire life. When the owners asked the vet to euthanize her, knowing they couldn't sell her, the vet brought her here, offering to pay for her care until she was adopted. "We'll find you a good home, sweet girl," Waverly cooed, Jane leaning into the continued attention from Waverly's hands. "Who wouldn't want you?" But tears clouded her vision as her brain replayed all the times Calamity Jane was passed over at adoption events. It never failed that a kid or two would fall in love with a clumsy pup, only to be veered by their parents to another, easier animal. Sure, the care Calamity Jane wasn't for everyone, but when she was first brought to the shelter, she had to be bathed a couple times a day, because every time she went to the bathroom, her weak legs would give out and she'd fall into her own waste. But Waverly found it hard to believe that not a single family in purgatory could offer the dog the attention she needed. The bell rattled against the front door to the shelter, pulling Waverly back to the present. With a sigh, she reluctantly withdrew her hands, moving them to her thighs as she readied to stand. Calamity Jane whined in protest, nosing at her hands. "I know, I'm sorry, girl, but I'll be right back," Waverly said. But Calamity Jane was insistent, lifting a paw to bat at her knee before losing her balance and tumbling to the floor once again. Leaving the black lab on her side on the floor was too much for Waverly to bear, so she pushed up from her kneeling position and plucked the dog off the floor, returning her to her bed. With one last rub between Calamity Jane's ears, she smiled. "I'll be back. Don't worry, sweetie." Her smile faded as she turned on her heel, carefully exited the kennel, and clicked the latch back into place. She walked to the front of the shelter, wiping her hands absent-mindedly on her jeans. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Waverly called as she made her way through the open door of the back side of the counter, eyeing the the back of a tall woman, red hair pulled back in a braid. The woman jumped before turning toward Waverly. Her brown eyes went wide in surprise, now slightly agape. Waverly smiled, eyes drifting to take in the sheriff's department uniform and the Stetson in this woman's hands. The uniform hadn't done much for her on any other deputy, but she couldn't help but notice how well it fit this one. Shaking her head, Waverly broke the silence. "How can I help you, deputy?" The officer smiled, striding closer to the counter. "I'd prefer Nicole if you don't mind, especially when I'm off duty." "Nice to meet you, Nicole," Waverly smiled, taking Nicole's offered hand. "You must be new in town." "I am, and that's why I'm here. I heard this is the best place to find a new friend in purgatory," Nicole replied, dimples popping. Waverly faltered under the attention from the soft brown eyes across from her. Was Nicole flirting with her, she wondered? Or had Nicole somehow heard that she was the nicest person in purgatory? Or had someone else put her up to this? "You know, a furry friend," Nicole added. "Right." Waverly shook her head again, twisting for a clipboard and grabbing an adoption application. "All potential adopters have to fill these out first, and then we could go back to the kennels and see if we can find you a friend." "Okay, thanks," Nicole beamed before leaning over the counter, eyes narrowing as she read the top line. When Nicole finished, clicking the pen and handing over the clipboard, Waverly eyed the references first, not surprised to find the sheriff's name listed at the top. Between that and the box checked to indicate that Nicole owned her home, the rest was almost irrelevant. Regardless, she lifted the page, noting that Nicole was interested in either a dog or a cat. Waverly hummed, letting the paper fall back to the clipboard. "This all checks out." She turned and lifted the counter that flipped up to allow Nicole back to the kennels. "Ready to meet the animals?" Nicole nodded and slipped through before Waverly lowered the counter back into place. She let the deputy through the door, a chorus of barking meeting them as soon as they crossed the threshold. Nicole beamed at the excitement around them, her attention shifting to the wagging tails and bouncing animals. Waverly watched as Nicole scanned the room, taking in all the dogs to the left and the cats to the right, before eyeing each dog, one run at a time. "Your application said you were interested in a dog or a cat," Waverly pointed out, raising her voice to be heard over the noise, as Nicole's eyes lingered on CJ. Nicole tore her gaze from the black lab almost reluctantly. I grew up with both, but..." The redhead trailed off, hands fidgeting on her Stetson as she looked down the line of dog runs before turning her back to them. "But you're leaning towards a dog?" Waverly observed. "I am, but my schedule really isn't suited for one, so a cat it is." Nicole spent the next 20 minutes getting to know the cats, seemingly most drawn to a black one with white patches and another gray speckled one. "What do you think?" Waverly prompted after double-checking the locks on the cat's enclosures. "They both seem great. I'm just not sure how I can pick one," Nicole trailed off as they walked back toward the front. "That's okay. It's a big decision. Big decision. Do you want to sleep on it?" Whatever Nicole was about to say was cut off by a heavy thud on the concrete floor, followed by a soft whine. Waverly turned quickly toward the sound to see Calamity Jane face first on the floor, a foot from her bed, long legs in every direction. She heard Nicole gasp next to her, the officer stepping closer towards CJ's run by the door. The hand not occupied by her Stetson curled around the chain link fence. "Calamity Jane," Waverly scolded as she drew closer. Nicole turned, face filled with concern. "Is she okay?" "She is. She just likes to move too quickly for her own good," Waverly sighed, stepping next to Nicole before addressing Calamity Jane. "Don't you, girl?" CJ huffed in response before the dog slipped and struggled to her feet, tail wagging happily at the attention. Waverly didn't miss the way Nicole's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't with the cats. "I think she wants to meet you, Nicole," Waverly pointed out, hand moving to the latch. The deputy nodded, eyes not leaving the pup. "Wait there, girl. We'll come to you," Waverly instructed softly as she lifted the latch and waved Nicole in, relieved when the dog seemed to listen, her enthusiastically wagging tail the only movement. But when Waverly secured the latch behind her, Calamity Jane couldn't contain herself any longer. She jumped towards Nicole, feet sliding across the floor in her excitement to meet someone new. Her momentum carried her face first towards the floor once again, but Nicole stepped forward, smoothly securing the pup in her arms before she could tumble over again. "You're an eager one, aren't you?" Nicole teased, lifting CJ until they were eye to eye. "She certainly is," Waverly nodded, lingering at the gate. "That's okay," Nicole smiled at the pup. "When I see something I like, I don't want to wait either." The deputy eased CJ back toward the ground, placing her in her bed before kneeling beside it, her hands running through thick black fur. Waverly warmed at the sight, CJ shifting as close to Nicole as she could, eager for the attention. Do you think she will outgrow the clumsiness? Nicole asked, gaze lifting to meet Waverly's, or will Calamity always be fitting? Waverly's chest tightened as it did every time she had to explain the pup's limitations to someone clearly enamored with her. CJ's enthusiasm, as she soaked up the attention by licking Nicole's hands, didn't help either. So how does this work? Nicole asked, longingly looking at CJ through the fence. The redhead bit her lip as she turned back toward Waverly. I assume you'll want to see my place first? Waverly was trying her best to keep her excitement over finding Calamity Jane such a great home, but it shone through in the bounce in her step and her hands twisting in front of her. Nicole had been much more concerned about leaving the dog alone during her long shifts and the unpredictable nature of her schedule than the dog's disability. Waverly was able to ease her worries with the promise of a few of the shelter's volunteers that she knew would be more than happy to let CJ out or walk her. You can take her home today if you want. Nicole's eyes bulged in surprise. Don't you need to check my references at least? The sheriff hired you, Waverly shrugged. He trusts you to protect us, so I'm sure you can handle any of these animals. Plus, you listed his home phone, his home phone number, not his office or his cell, so I know you really asked him. Oh wow, Nicole breathed, turning back to CJ. Waverly contentedly watched the pair before panic knocked her on her heels. Oh God, but you aren't prepared to take her, are you? You don't have food or a crate or anything. We have some food here you can take, and I can give you a leash. Oh, or you can come get her tomorrow if that's better. Or Nicole reached out with a gentle hand to her arm. It's okay. No, I don't have anything, but she can come with me to the pet store tonight and we'll get everything. It'll be a good bonding experience and she can pick out all her toys for herself. Nicole's easy smile, along with the warmth that spread from her touch, calmed her. Are you sure? I mean, I'm a planner and I can't imagine just... She paused, swinging her arms nervously. Jumping in like this. I got it. Don't worry, Waverly. I meant it when I said I don't want her to wait. And I know you've been taking real good care of her, but I don't want Calamity Jane to spend another night in the shelter. Waverly was taken back by Nicole's thoughtfulness, but gathered herself as she turned toward the front again, clapping her hands together. All right, let me just have you fill out the adoption paperwork, and then she's all yours. As Nicole signed the remaining form, Waverly's mind raced. In spite of the brief time with the deputy, Waverly was captivated by Nicole, and she panicked as she tried to think of a way to continue to spend time in her company. That's it? Nicole asked as she signed the last line with flourish. Oh, well, there is a mandatory check-in on the pet and you at your residence about a week after adoption to see how you both are doing, Waverly lied. Do you want to set that up now or... Oh, yeah, of course, Nicole replied. They settled for a time next week, Waverly putting the date and time in her phone instead of on the schedule behind the counter. Before Nicole left, a wiggling CJ in her arms. Bye, Officer. Nicole, Waverly called after them with a wave. Realizing she hadn't caught the deputy's last name, she looked down at the completed forms in front of her. Officer Hot, of course. And I'll leave you guys there. There's a little bit left that you can go read on your own and see what Waverly does when she goes to check on Nicole at her house.
Orange, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's one of my favorite stories of yours that you've written, and I'm so thrilled that you opted to read it today. I'm glad that you didn't read the truck stop one. I love the truck stop series, but after the super angsty story that Aya graced us with, I'm glad we had a little bit of fluff as a buffer before we move into our next author. So thank you again, and thank you for stepping in at the last minute today. I really appreciate you being ready to roll so quickly. Did you mute yourself? You can talk to me.
No problem. I preemptively muted myself just in case. But no, thank you. I'm always happy to jump in.
Yeah, it was a blast, and I'm hoping to see you at an EarpCon this year. Hopefully, we get EarpCons this year, and I'm looking forward to sharing airspace with you again once we're allowed more than the less than a 6 feet distance.
Yeah, the distance across the country, I guess, is acceptable social distancing for now. So.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. I'd say it's a good. A country's width is safe.
Coast to coast,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Orange, so much. That was really fantastic.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Well, guys, we are moving along at a nice little clip here. In fact, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. So I'm going to vamp for a couple minutes before turning over to our top of the 8 o'clock hour reader. So we will definitely be providing links to these stories once we get out of this live reading session. I'll be posting them on the EFA website or Twitter feed, and you can link through there. Oh, thank you, Liam. Yes, you did tell me that I could vamp. I appreciate the assurances. We are deep into the production of season 4 for Earp Fiction Addiction podcast. We've already got a couple of episodes recorded, or at least primary segments recorded. We're working on our interviews. We're very excited. We do have a very special season opener for you guys that's going to be coming up, and it will be making its premiere the week prior to 420. So everybody do your backwards math. But it's 4/13, I believe, is the day that our season premiere is happening. So kind of keep your eyes peeled for that. 420 is episode 2. 420 is episode 2. We're pre-celebrating, Faith. You're exactly right. So episode 1 should drop on the 13th of April. So we're excited to be back into production on that. We've made sure that almost all of the authors that we're interviewing for the first 16 episodes are authors that we have not interviewed before, with the exception of 1 or 2 very special episodes where we are going to be talking with some returning guests. But we are really excited to be getting some fresh blood on the show to interrogate, as you know that we do. And also because of that, because we're going to have new folks, that means we're going to have a whole host of new Desert Island fic selections to share this season. So I'm excited to hear what these authors are going to select as their Desert Island fic. But yeah, we're thrilled to be able to bring this live reading to you today. I'm so happy that technology is on our side. I'm glad it's not 1918, you guys. I'm just glad it's not 1918. That we have the ability to connect with you live like this, and give the, that's right, WrackWonder, F the Spanish flu, and give these authors an opportunity to share their work with you in a way that you haven't heard before, and also to promote their work other than on their Twitter feeds or through the EFA recommendations on our feed. So I'm just thrilled that we're able to do this. We will be doing another session of live readings on Friday. Again, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific, and it'll again go for another 2 hours. And I'm sure we're going to continue to produce these going forward, not just as part of the self-isolation quarantine situation that we're all dealing with, but I think this is already proving to be a success, and I'm excited to continue this on just perpetually as the EFA continues promoting fan fiction, because you guys, fan fiction is awesome and everybody should know about it. And I'm just going to keep banging that drum. All right. Well, I think that I have vamped long enough. I'm going to oh, yes, I can absolutely do that. Just everybody make sure that you're set to mute. I'm trying to stay on top of it and keeping everybody's muted if they're not the reader who is reading. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat window. It's cracking me up. And so just make sure that you're muted. If you don't have the mute function available to you through Zoom, which I think some folks are connected on Android phones or things like that, that for whatever reason on the Android app, it doesn't give you the option to mute. Just take special, steps to cover the microphone on your device, just to make sure that we're not accidentally talking over our reader while they're trying to read. But yep, that is definitely enough for me. I'm going to invite our next author to the floor. It is the delightful WrackWonder starting us off on this next hour. Thank you again so much for joining us, all of you. And I just know that you're in for a treat with the wonderful, delightful author WrackWonder. My darling, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. I am going to read from the first chapter of Scars of Sweet Paradise and maybe a bit from the second chapter if there's time. This is my season 4 speculation fic. I'm really looking forward to Emily and the gang obliterating it when we finally do get season 4, but here is my take on it. There are some time skips and hops, so I will try to keep track of that for everyone as well. Chapter 1. The seasons were changing. Nicole could feel it in the air. A cool, unrelenting breeze seeped into her boots and her jacket and her wool gloves. She shivered slightly, but didn't move from her spot near the fire she had built hours before. There was nothing else to do in the strange stillness of the forest, nothing else to do but sit and feed the fire and brood. I should be there, she said out loud, looking up at Randy Nedley, who was equally bundled across from her. He shook himself awake, snorting softly, and frowned. Can't disagree with you. This is insane. It's been hours, and it's my ring. Nicole sprung up, facing the cave and its darkness. Wynonna and Jeremy had disappeared at daybreak, but the sun had set hours before, and Nicole was still waiting, still on the outside, still wishing she were included in heroics taking place wherever the hell Wynonna was. But you know the rules, Nicole, Nedley said, a raised eyebrow the only sign he felt any emotion at all. We are the watchers, they are the doers. No offense, Sheriff, but that's bullshit. Language, Nedley smirked, and it was enough to bring Nicole back to her seat on the log by the fire. She gazed darkly at the flames, pouting, wondering how it always came down to this. They're going to bring Waverly home, Nicole, and we're going to be here when they do. Nedley had a way of simplifying the complex. He chose his words carefully, and his concise, calm voice made Nicole exhale. She knew he was right. She knew that wandering into an enchanted cave as a mortal was not the greatest idea. But every cell in her body was telling her to do it anyways, to take the risk, to do anything, to risk everything, if it meant getting Waverly back. Listen, there's a reason you end up in the hospital every 6 weeks. Get a hold of yourself, Nicole. She's gonna need you. The old man was right, but it didn't stop the ache in Nicole's chest. It didn't stop the crippling anticipation. 6 months ago. The world smelled familiar when Nicole opened her eyes. She knew that she was lying down, flat on her back. She knew that she was covered in sweat and dried blood, and she also knew that she was far from purgatory. She raised herself on her elbows, looking from left to right, trying to remember the seconds before. Where'd she been? Where was she now? The house was familiar. She knew she was lying on the lawn of her childhood home, but she had no clue how she had transported here. There had been a woman, tall and strong, and Jeremy and Robin, but then nothing, just nothing, until she opened her eyes and found herself lying in the grass so far from the Ghost River Triangle. She stood, brushing herself off, relieved that she was at least still clothed in the uniform of Purgatory's finest. Purgatory was her town. Purgatory meant Waverly. And this place, the place where she'd been born, it meant nothing. She wanted to leave. But her phone was gone, as was her wallet. With no ID, no passport, no driver's license, Nicole wandered briefly through the streets. Her parents had long since moved away. Not that she had any desire to track them down. Her mother gave birth on the living room floor, a doula dutifully at her side, because hospitals were owned by the government and their medicines were poison, or so her father used to say. Nicole had been born with her umbilical cord twisted around her neck. It was her first close encounter with death. It would not be her last. People glanced at her strangely as she wandered away from her suburban neighborhood towards the beach. It was cold. She knew the water would be frigid, but she wanted to look at the ocean, at the Pacific. It had been so long. When she reached the water, when she dragged her tired feet through the sand, she fell on her knees in the surf and ignored the freezing waves lapping at her thighs, because something was wrong. Something was so wrong, and Waverly wasn't with her. The ring in Nicole's pocket was cold, a shard of ice against her chest. When she finally found the strength to move, when her pathetic, straggled appearance was enough to convince a local drugstore to let her use the phone, she dialed the one number she knew would never fail her. "Sheriff," she breathed into the phone, "I need help. Present day." The woods were too silent, even for the late hour. There was no rustle of little paws or mournful howls from the wolves that lived in the mountains. It was as if the world had stilled, as if every creature was waiting for whatever it was that could happen, as if the universe knew that maybe, just maybe, an angel would fall back to earth, back home, and it all made Nicole's skin crawl. Nedley appeared to be sleeping, so Nicole tossed another log on the fire and nestled further into her coat. She glanced down at her sleeve and, as was now her habit, rolled it up, pushing her flannel shirt and jacket aside to reveal the ink on her pale wrist. She traced the now familiar outline, finding comfort in its permanence, and tried to count each exhale from her lungs. The air stung her exposed skin, but she didn't dare cover it because the tattoo on her arm was a comfort. It made her heart beat steadier. She hoped Waverly would understand, if she ever saw Waverly again. It started small. Nicole couldn't wear Julian's ring. It was prone to strange temperature fluctuations, although once Waverly's disappearance, the stone had gone dull and gray. It fit her poorly and it was cumbersome, and it seemed somehow pregnant with meaning and power and questions that Nicole wasn't ready to answer. She kept the ring in her pocket, but she wanted more, a physical reminder of Waverly. So she raided Waverly's jewelry drawer. She settled on a ring, another ring, something Waverly wore casually when she felt like it, small and gold and completely unremarkable. But Nicole liked to think of it on Waverly's animated fingers, and she could remember Waverly wearing it the first time they'd kissed. So Nicole threaded it through a gold chain and wore it every day around her neck. Winona took to wearing one of Waverly's necklaces too, and then another ring. Even Jeremy started sporting a dainty silver charm bracelet around his wrist. They all desperately wanted Waverly with them, a constant reminder as they researched and searched and eschewed sleep in favor of their quest. And then Nicole almost lost the necklace. She panicked, searching her car and her home, feeling her heart race uncontrollably because losing the necklace somehow meant losing Waverly again. And she couldn't live with that. The necklace was a talisman. It was a sign. And without it, Waverly was gone and she was never coming back. So when Nicole showed up to the homestead in tears, Winona let her in, as she always did. And when Winona presented the lost necklace tucked safely in her pocket, since she'd found it on the floor of Waverly's bedroom, Nicole knew what she had to do. The next day, Nicole made an appointment. The artist asked if she'd prefer something from the binder of flash images set on the counter, but Nicole pulled out her phone and showed the woman with a trendy side cut and friendly eyes exactly what she was looking for. She didn't want something pre-made. She wanted Waverly forever. That night, when she returned to the homestead, Winona took one look at Nicole's bandaged arm and pushed Purgatory Sheriff hard against the wall. "What the fuck did you do? We talked about this, Hot. No giving up on her." "Winona, it's not... Seriously, what is she going to say when she gets back?" "Earp." Nicole pushed Winona's shoulders, forcing the woman to take a step back. "I didn't hurt myself. It's not what you think." Winona looked unconvinced, but she raised an eyebrow and challenged at Nicole's arm. "Don't get weird, okay? I mean, weirder," Nicole said carefully, removing the wrappings from her wrist and forearm. Angel wings marked Nicole's pale skin, permanent, forever, eternal angel wings. Winona's eyes looked like glass, shimmering with unshed tears. "Like the ones in her room?" Winona asked, curving her fingers around Nicole's wrist. "Exactly." "Hardcore." "Yeah." They didn't discuss it again. The tattoo had settled into her skin perfectly, its lines still crisp and delicate. She raised her arm to her mouth and pressed her lips over the ink. "We're coming for you, baby. Hold on, just a little longer." A log on the fire cracked and Nedley stirred, burrowing deeper into his jacket and scarf. Seconds later, on his phone, an alarm beeped, indicating that it was 3 a.m. Nicole yawned. "The devil's hour," Nicole mumbled. Nedley mumbled, and Nicole's entire body froze. "What did you..." She couldn't finish her thought as the ground started shaking. It was a low rumble, barely perceptible, and then the earth itself seemed to stretch and sigh and toss Nicole from her perch on the log. The flames on their bonfire died in an instant, extinguished by an unseen wind, and it was all Nicole could do to brace herself against the ground, her cheek flat against the cold earth as rocks and grass and branches scattered over her and Nedley. Hail fell from the sky, pelting Nicole's back and legs, and she cried out in pain and fear. She could hear Nedley too, yelping in shock, and then a sound unlike any sound on earth resounded in the woods, bouncing and repeating and echoing off the trees and the mountains. A trumpet blast, pure and horrible, deafening in its volume, and Nicole could feel it in the earth. She could feel its vibrations as she raised her hands to her ears and screamed. When the light came, the trumpet sounded once more, and then again, 7 blasts of sound that pushed Nicole to the forest floor. She could taste blood. She could feel it trickling down from her nose into her mouth, but the light, fire burst from the mouth of the cave, cloaking everything in smoke and ash, and Nicole's eyes burned. She could hear Nedley yell again, and the light, the flashes of orange and amber, forced her to turn away, to shield her face from the haze and the noise. Except she could hear something new, something familiar. She could hear screams. Wynonna. Wynona's voice carried over the cries of the earth. Her voice shaped around the sound of a name, and Nicole forced her eyes open. She forced herself up on all fours, willing her body to hold on, willing herself to stay conscious. And then the fire was gone, and Nicole swayed on her knees at its absence, because in the mouth of the cave where the fire had been appeared 4 people in tableau. Doc rested on his knees. His once trim mustache had given way to a full beard. Beside him, at his shoulder, Jeremy stood motionless, eyes wide and frightened. Wynonna knelt close by on the other side, her mouth still whispering the name, that name. And in Doc's arms lay Waverly. Waverly! Wynonna's voice was uncharacteristically shrill, and she fluttered around Waverly, leaning over Doc to touch her sister's face. Jeremy started calling Waverly too, and both Wynonna and Jeremy didn't seem to know what to do with their hands. They brushed fingers through Waverly's hair and squeezed Doc's shoulders, and generally were all sound and fear and awe. Nicole swayed on her feet, eyes focused on her girlfriend, but there was too much activity to really see Waverly, to get very close, because Wynonna was on her knees trying to take Waverly's hands, and Jeremy was waving his arms in the air, and Nicole couldn't concentrate. She could barely stand. Let her through. Nedley's voice broke through the excited exclamations, and Wynonna and Jeremy both looked up for the first time and turned their heads. Doc raised his head too, and it was only then that Nicole could see the white hair at his temples and through his beard. He looked tired. His eyes looked old, but he nodded once at Nicole. It was the only movement he had made. Nicole took one step forward and then another, and then she knelt on the ground in front of Doc and looked down at the woman in his arms. At first, it seemed that Waverly was unconscious, but soon it became apparent that she was very much awake. Her clothes were ragged. Nicole didn't recognize the oversized shirt tied around her torso and guessed it was Doc's. Waverly was barefoot and her pants cut off at the knees, and she was dirty and shaking slightly. Her eyes blinked steadily, but she gave no indication that she was aware of where she was or who was with her. Nicole was almost too scared to speak. "She cannot see," Doc said, and the sound of his gruff voice startled all of them. "It was the light, super bright, super bright, like sun exploding bright," Jeremy nodded, and Wynonna shook her head and gripped Waverly's hands. "We'll fix it, baby girl, we're on it." But Waverly's face didn't change. Nicole took a deep breath and then another, trying to take it all in, trying to think above the constant questions from Wynonna and Jeremy. Wynonna held both of Waverly's hands, and Nicole watched as Waverly's thumbs traced her sister's fingers. "Waverly?" Nicole's voice was so light and ragged from her earlier screams, but it was enough to silence the group. They all seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. They all knew the next moment was important and held in a collective breath. Waverly let go of Wynonna's left hand and slowly raised her own arm. She didn't turn her face, her expression did not change, but her left hand continued its journey. Waverly's fingers brushed Nicole's chin, and then, as if the feel of Nicole's face was a map, Waverly's hand continued drifting along Nicole's cheek and then into her hair. It stopped at the back of Nicole's head, and Nicole could feel Waverly's fingers playing with the soft hairs at the back of her neck. Waverly's hands always seemed to find the back of Nicole's head when they kissed, when they made love, at the end of a long day in greeting, at the rise of the sun in fond departure, and to feel it again after 6 months, to feel Waverly's fingers toying with the short strands at the base of her skull. Nicole released a sob. Waverly curled her fingers around the base of Nicole's skull and held on tightly. It was not a painful touch. It was anchoring. Somehow Nicole understood that Waverly had reached for her, unseeing, unspeaking, but feeling her way back to the present, back from wherever she had been. And it was only then, in that second, with Waverly's hand so solidly holding her head, that Nicole let herself fully accept that Waverly had come home, that Waverly was home. She was home. And that is all I will read for now.
Woo! That was so fantastic.
Thank you, Jen.
Oh my gosh. I love that story so much, and you just made me love it like exponentially more. Oh my God. Yes, chat, I am with you. I'm with the chat. Wow. Yes, Queen. Wow, wow, wow. Amazing. So much love.
Thank you,
Yes.
Fran.
This is just such a, oh my God, you guys, if you haven't read this story, you have to read this story. And I'll tell you something. Lauren actually skipped a section at the top of the second chapter in order to get through all the stuff happening in quote present time within the story. So yeah, if you want to know what she skipped, if you want to just dive into the just gorgeous glory that is this story, please do check it out after this reading is wrapped up. I mean, read everybody's stories, but this story will change your life. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Lauren, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay. Well, whoo, sorry, I got to catch my breath. That was just so fantastic. All of the authors today have been just absolutely fantastic, and the stories have been lovely. Obviously, I'm particularly excited about Scars of Sweet Paradise and WrackWonder's work, but it's just, I'm so thrilled to have you guys with us today. Let's move on to our next author. This is Dream Walking 78. Dream Walking 78. Let me make sure I turn your mic back on. There you go. Well, you are still muted. Why are you still muted? Unmute. There we go. Okay, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to everybody who has been reading the fics and commenting. I really debated going for a hot mess tonight, but there's so much coming ahead that I don't think I can go a future chapter without giving away major plot points. So instead tonight, I'm going back to the original Could Have Been Me and reading a scene from it. And if you've not read it, it shouldn't give away too much, but maybe it'll get you interested in it. After Winona left, Waverly made up her mind. Once Champ returned, she would ask for a divorce. Once finalized, she would find a way back to Nicole, one foot in front of the other. When Champ did return, the conversation did not go as expected. He begged at first for forgiveness. He said he did not realize she was unhappy. He cried. One more shot, he pleaded. He would go to marriage counseling with where they could fix their issues. Please, babe, I'll do anything you ask, he begged through tears. Waverly still wasn't sure if they were real or as fake as the rest of him. It's a little late for that now, Champ, she angrily replied. Her arms crossed against her chest. Her jaw was set. Champ started another desperate plea. Oh, come on, Waverly. How was I supposed to know a trip meant so much to you? Don't you think I want to keep my wife happy? I can't stand the thought of losing you. There it was, that charm he had used in the beginning of their relationship. Let's try counseling. I'll even start planning a vacation to Portland just like you had wanted. I have some time off coming up in a few months. I'll even rent a cabin on Mount Hood. Waverly had thought she was ready to refuse anything he could offer. Instead, she found the guilt over cheating on him with Nicole rearing its head. One sheet of paper said she was still married. In every way that mattered, they weren't. But that one fiber product stated that technically, she had cheated on him. She owed him at least one attempt, she reasoned. No, she owed him nothing, she thought. Champ, you've wasted a lot of my love and my life. You've taken me for granted, and only now, in the final hours, have you decided I might be worth it. Do you have any idea what it's like to be second to everything else in your life? Champ dropped to one knee. Tears continued streaming down his face. Babe, if you give me one more chance, I won't mess it up this time. I'll make sure you're the center of my world. Waverly knew words were cheap, but the guilt had gnawed on her since the conversation began. She thought about Nicole each time a new plea fell from his mouth. It had been easy to love Nicole. Pleading had not been needed while she was with Nicole. Waverly had been loved for exactly who she was. Loved, as in past tense. Nicole had left, and Waverly had stayed. How sure could Waverly be that Nicole was waiting for her? Maybe she had someone else keeping her bed warm at night. She had, after all, seduced a married woman. She quickly shook that thought from her mind. She had told Nicole to come to San Francisco. She had just as much of a part to play in what had happened as Nicole did. She was the adulterer. Waverly made a rash decision with that final thought. She would fight for her marriage, if for no other reason than to cleanse her conscience of what she had done. Fine, Champ. Make the appointments and start planning the trip. The second the planning stalls or the counseling fails, you agree to walk away, giving me whatever I want in the divorce. Anything you want, he promised. As he walked away, Waverly became physically ill. She ran to the bathroom and emptied the contents of her stomach into the toilet. The acid burned her esophagus, leaving a foul, bitter taste in her mouth. Only then, after her body had physically given out, did she notice the tears streaming down her face. As she slumped back against the bathtub, her mind raced back to Nicole. If Champ had been listening, it would have been hard to miss the sobs that wrecked through Waverly's body. Instead, she found herself sitting alone for the next 30 minutes. She reached into her back pocket, pulling out her phone. She accessed the secure folder, unlocking the pictures of her weekend with Nicole. She lingered over a picture taken on the catamarans right after their risque moment. One of the couples had offered to take a picture of them together with the sun setting behind them. Nicole had wrapped her arms around Waverly's waist. Waverly leaned back against Nicole, her hands landing on top of Nicole's. The smile on Waverly's face was one of pure love and adoration. Nicole smiled down at the woman in her arms, grinning as if she was holding the most precious thing in the world. It was not a look of lust despite what they had just done. Nicole loved her. Waverly's hand flew to her mouth in an attempt to cover up the whimper she let out. Her hand grabbed her side. Feeling the shirt under her palm wasn't good enough. She fought with her shirt until her hand touched skin. She squeezed the spot until half moons formed under her nails. She looked down, realizing she had drawn blood. She then whispered, "What have I done?" She had typed it and erased it at least 20 times already. "Whatever you decide," echoed through her head. She knew this was going to hurt Nicole, even if she did understand and respect Waverly's choices. She hit send knowing that honesty was one of the few things Nicole had asked for. "I'm so sorry. He wants to try therapy, and I agreed to go." There wasn't a response. She had expected a fit of rage or tears. She deemed the void to be the worst of her fears. She stared off into the night, her fingers gently circling a spot on her side. Tomorrow was a new day with a new therapist. So why did it feel like she was trying to repair broken glass with a hammer? Waverly would not tell Champ, nor the therapist, about Nicole. She refused. Winona was right. If they couldn't solve their problems from the beginning, how would adding a bombshell help it any more or less? The first month of therapy had progressed better than Waverly expected. Champ had taken her to dinner and even agreed to a vacation that fall in Vermont. After being praised by the therapist at the steps they were taking to reclaim their relationship, Champ backtracked. The words of encouragement from the one session satisfied Champ's already inflated ego. In his mind, he had tried hard enough. He was finished. His next work consultations were starting to line up. When Waverly noticed the week that they were supposed to be in Vermont that Champ was going to be in Colorado, she brought it up to him. Just like before, there was an excuse for how big of a job it was. It would lead to more consultations. She reminded him it was part of their agreement. He simply replied, "You don't care about how important this client is to my career." He then stormed out of the room. After that one spat, Champ became cold and distant once again. It had been 8 weeks since Nicole had left. More than once, between meetings at work, Waverly would find herself staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows, trying to find the beauty of the city by the bay. How had it seemed so bright and full of wonder during those 3 days, yet now, it was just like any other city she had been to. It had its quirks, but it was not that unique. Unintentionally, her hand landed on her side, gently caressing a spot that had healed. "You're thinking about her again." Chrissy startled Waverly as she walked beside her at the window, peering out just as Waverly had been. "I'm working on things with Champ," Waverly said sternly, shooting Chrissy a glance that dared her to say anything else. Chrissy took the dare. "You always reach for that same spot when you're thinking of her." She waited until Waverly looked at her again, making sure their eye contact did not break as she spoke. "There's no doubt in my mind you love her. How many doubts do you have about how much you love him?" Chrissy turned on her heel, quickly walked away, leaving Waverly to drown in those doubts. A few nights later, Waverly was sitting on the couch, staring out the window of her living room. Champ had left the day before, heading to his next consultation. For almost 2 months now, they had been going to the therapist. Their session the week before Champ left had delved into their sex lives. Champ was determined there was nothing wrong with that part of their life. As Waverly expressed her interest, he looked on in dismay. "Those fantasies may work great on paper, but they're not real, Waverly. Are you even willing to try?" She was exasperated. She knew this time he was wrong. He had experienced everything she had described and found herself gloriously fulfilled for the first time afterwards. It's like those stories of Doc Holliday. It's great for entertainment purposes, but it doesn't exist in the real world. Waverly looked over at the picture of her and Champ sitting on the table next to her complete history of gunslingers. She picked up the frame, staring at the fake smiles plastered on both her and Champ's face. Her teeth clenched together as anger coursed through her. She flung the picture as if it was a frisbee. It landed hard against the wall, the glass shattering before falling across the floor. Waverly walked back to the couch, plopping down. She picked up her phone and opened it. Her finger glided over the secure folder. When it prompts her for her fingerprint, she hesitates momentarily. Her finger covers the sensor, opening the contents. She finds herself scrolling until landing of the picture of Nicole bathed in moonlight with a sheet barely covering her. She smiled and felt the warmth slowly start to take over. She had not looked at the picture since starting therapy. She had thought it would be counterproductive. After their last session, productivity be damned. Her hand laid on her side. "Live your life for you." The voice in her head echoed again. Her phone rang, causing her to jump. She quickly scrambled to answer the call from her sister. She hoped it wasn't another call for bail money. In a few words, everything changed. "Baby girl, it's time to come home. Curtis passed away. Gus needs us." Winona was already with Gus by this time. The thought crossed Waverly's mind as she tried to find a comfortable position on the couch. Winona had only been a few hours away from purgatory when Gus called her. Winona had called Waverly as soon as she had heard. As they said their goodbyes, Waverly heard the familiar roar of Winona starting a motorcycle. As the call ended, Waverly had started combing websites to find a flight out that night. There was nothing until the wee hours of the morning. She busied herself by throwing together a carry-on bag. She placed it by the door, set her alarm for a few hours from then, and laid down on the couch. The sleep she desired was replaced by her mind running rampant with the decisions she had made in her life. Maybe she should have stayed in Texas. She could have been there for Curtis. Maybe she should have at least went back to visit more often. Maybe she should have followed Nicole home. At least then she would have seen him one more time. Nicole. No. She quickly pushed the thought of the redhead from her mind. She tossed and turned, new questions torturing her with each attempt to sleep. When she thought she could take no more, the alarm blared from her phone, causing her to jump, nearly knocking the phone from the coffee table. One cab ride later, she stepped up to security, her heart racing. The memory of Nicole walking through the same line she was about to enter, headed to the same place she was now going, made her sick. She took an audible gulp and stepped forward. The process was rushed through so quickly that her mind didn't have time to fully dwell on the past. Only when she was through it did she start trying to breathe normally, once again realizing that her mind took a brief break, but her body had not. She found her gate with little more than an hour before boarding. Nicole had no reason to respond. Waverly had shut her out. Nicole had said, anything you need, but that was before Waverly agreed to therapy with Champ and cut Nicole out of her life. Waverly typed out the message anyways. With the early hours, she wasn't even sure if Nicole would be awake. Even if she was, Waverly didn't anticipate a response. If sending this message was screaming into the void, Waverly decided to do so at the top of her lungs. She hit send. Nicole, I need you. And I'm stopping there. If you want to find out how this started and how it ends, just look up the fic.
Yes, definitely look up this fic. This is a fantastic story that definitely got my attention when it first showed up on AO3. And Dream, you did a fantastic job of reading your work. And I'm going to go back and read your story again. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. And for anybody who doesn't know, fair warning, very explicit. I chose the tamer part to read.
Yeah, you had to cherry pick the tame part because yes, it is a delightfully explicit story. All right, so moving on to our third author of this hour, the delightful Like It Matters is on deck with a well, I gotta admit, this is a story that was dedicated to me. So I'm thrilled that you're gonna be reading the next chapter to this little work you got going there.
Well, it got me off my butt. Oh, can you hear me?
I can, and I love that you created some artwork for yourself. That's great.
I'm going the distance here.
That's fantastic. All right, well, I'm turning the floor over to you.
Thank you. What did I do? Okay, here we go. So I'm reading the next chapter, chapter 13 in my fic Destiny. Bobo quickens his pace when he lantern outside Gus's house is lit. It hadn't been when he ran past earlier on the way to join Elder Wolf and Elder Hardy. He sneaks behind the house and peers in the kitchen window. He rests on it quietly when he sees Gus sitting at the table, cup of something steaming cradled in her hand. When she looks up, her eyes grow in confusion or maybe surprise, but she gets up and slides the top half of the Dutch door open. Is Waverly on her way to the safe house? He asks quickly, but Gus's face gives nothing away. I need a bag for Nicole. Can you grab some things for her? Bobo asks, looking back behind him. What are you talking about? What's going on? He asks. Bobo rolls his eyes. Gus, I'm trying to get them to safety. I just called down to the river to wait. Please trust me, he says impatiently. He watches the elder woman as she contemplates for only a moment. All right, give me 5 minutes, she says. She turns to go, but stops. Waverly left with Brother Theo half an hour ago, she says. She did? Good, he says, beyond relieved that Gus had convinced her to go on ahead. While he waited for Gus to gather Nicole's things, he thought back to the circumstances that brought him to New Purgatory and the chance meeting with the little girl that changed his life completely. Bobo had been left outside his colony gates as a young boy when his drunk, no-good father learned he'd been sired by another alpha. He had heard his mother's screams from the other side of the colony gate, and when no one came to get him after a couple of days, he moved on, subsisting off of plants and small game that he managed to trap. Years for himself and cursing his own birth, came upon a group of male alphas who seemed to be just as alone and angry as he was. He joined up with them, but after a time he felt like he had waded into a fast-moving river and found himself in the middle of it, unable to turn around and unable to move forward. He could no longer abide by the take what we want, no matter the cost rules his companions lived by, but wasn't sure he could survive on his own again. His breaking point had been when they'd come across a colony unlike any other. They were welcomed into it and made to feel like kings. But when they were asked to do something in return, to strengthen the gene pool, as it was put, he knew what the colony was, a breeding colony. He knew he couldn't do it, and he fled in the middle of the night. He was able to free 3 of the younger Omegas, but had to refuse. But 2 had refused to leave their sisters, and the one who did come with him and died of infection before he could get another colony. He'd arrived at New Purgatory, guilt-ridden, broken, and lost. He had intended to just buy some supplies and move on, but a bright-eyed young girl had stopped him as he came out to the shop and told him that New Purgatory was a nice place to live and that he didn't need to leave if he didn't want to. He had been ready to just ignore the little girl, but she was insistent, even telling him that her father, an elder, was always looking for good men to help keep the colony safe. The way she had looked at him that day, like she knew something he didn't, made him believe that perhaps he might be able to redeem a bit of his soul. He'd faltered some since living in New Purgatory, especially when it came to Willa, but he always remembered Waver's words, even when he'd spent time out of her good graces. But now it was time to live up to what she saw in him years ago. Okay, I got what I could together, Gus says, and hands him the bag. She pauses, though, and he looks up at her. Will she be all right? She asks just above a whisper. Bobo can see the realization dawn on the older woman's face. She's never going to see her daughter again. I'll make sure of it, he says earnestly. You tell her, she says, but her words are lost in tears. I'll tell her. Know that she loves you and will always be thankful for you, Boba says with a small smile, figuring that would be what Nicole would want him to say. Gus just nods, overcome with tears. I have to go now, he says, knowing he's cutting it close now. He starts to take off, but turns and gives her a reassuring smile. I'll let you know when they reach where they're headed. Nicole hates waiting, not knowing anything. Her head aches and her wrists and chest burn. It's about the 2 alphas she just killed without thought. She justified it by reminding herself that it was self-defense, but still, she felt guilt. At least they didn't suffer. By the look in each one's eyes, they didn't really know what hit them. It was time Nicole had killed a human. She knew very well she was capable. She'd always felt it under her skin and her blood. Sometimes when she'd hunt, she'd spook her target just for the fun and challenge of chasing it, tracking it with her superior senses. But taking human life, she knew it would leave a mark on her soul. She had a feeling that when this was all said and done, she and Waverly were safe. She saw no other outcome. She'd have more marks she'd have to live with. But it would be worth it. Waverly was worth everything. She tries to get comfortable as she kneels low in the void left by the upended roots of a fallen tree, but she's so cold. She'd made her way to the hiding spot by traversing the river to mask her scent. She knew they'd be looking for her the moment they saw her missing. She wonders what Bobo will tell them and what they'll do to him when they learn she'd escaped and left him breathing. She felt a pang of guilt, but with Waverly hopefully already on the run, waiting for her somewhere, she had to push Bobo's fate aside for now. She brings her nose to the air when she finally hears leaves and dirt being crushed under booted feet with her good ear. She smells Bobo and sighs in relief. Over here, she whispers, sticking her head out of the hiding spot. He finds his way quickly and hands her a bag of supplies. Waverly's at the safe house already with Theo, he says before she can even ask. She falls back on her haunches, a large breath pushing back past her in relief. Okay, good, she says. You'll take me to her? She asks, standing quickly and regretting it when she staggers. He puts out a hand to steady her, but she shakes it off gently. I'm okay, she says, and looks at him expectantly. I gotta go back, Nicole. I'm going to try to buy you both some time, he says. If it was just her, she'd tell him no, just leave it. But it isn't just her, and when they realize Waverly is gone too, well, every second Bobo can buy them will count. She reaches out her forearm and grasps his when he extends his too. She winces at the pain caused by fabric scraping the open wounds on her wrists, but doesn't let it keep her from squeezing his arm and looking with a warm smile of gratitude. Thank you, she says earnestly. Don't thank me yet. I sketched a rough map of where the safe house is, he says, pointing to the bag. It's on the last page of us put in your bag, says, shrugging apologetically. At the mention of Gus, her eyes fill with tears. She had time to process the consequences of her hurried escape. She said she loves you and understands, Bobo says. If you're able, watch over her, Nicole says, wiping away tears quickly. If by some miracle they don't kill me, I will, he says with a crooked grin. I don't know what else to say, Nicole whispers. Let Waverly know. I still remember when we first met, what she said to me, he says with a sad smile and turns to go. He stops abruptly and turns back. Leave now and don't stop. No one comes for you by next morning. Head east till you hit the big river and then south. It'll take you to New Dakota, he says. And then he's gone in the inky darkness of the forest. Waverly paces the packed earth floor, looking up at the slightest hint of movement beyond the door above her. Theo could only get her to the safe house, but he had to get back so it wouldn't be missed. She'd been left with instructions to stay put until someone came for her. There would be a special knock, and she'd know it was safe. Her mind is racing with thoughts of Nicole, though. Had she escaped? Were they beating her? Was she dead? Her fear and worry had grown stronger with each passing moment. She'd already tried to distract herself by going through the items that Gus packed for her. She couldn't help but smile, knowing Nicole had bought and bartered for most of the things in her bag, showing just how thoroughly she'd planned, all just to keep safe. There were tunic tops and pants her size for the journey, boots, a pair of warm wool socks, and extra undergarments. Gus had put in a book, some paper and pen, flint and steel for fire, a separate bundle filled with dried fruit, nuts, and jerky. There was a bedroll tied to the bed as well. Waverly swells with gratitude for the alpha. Only thing missing now was Nicole. Nicole squats down under some brush and turns on the small electric torch Bobo had given her. She studies the map once more and pops her head up to look for the landmark he'd written down. It had been a real challenge in the dark, but she knew she was on the right track because every once in a while she'd pick up a trace scent from Waverly. She finally locates the tree that forms a perfect Y with a large knot near the base. She runs to it, walks off 30 paces, and steps on something that is definitely not solid ground. She drops down immediately and finds the edge, prying it up slowly. Waverly, she whispers, and asks to move her head as the crude wooden trapdoor flies open. Nicole. Waverly breathes out in relief and throws her arms around her neck, pressing her lips to the side of her face. She pulls back immediately and wipes her lips slowly. You're bleeding, she says worriedly, and steps down so Nicole can climb down the ladder. Once they are on the ground and the door is closed, Waverly takes Nicole's face gingerly in her hands and looks at her as if she can't believe it's her. You're here, she says as tears fill her eyes rapidly. I am, Nicole says with a grin, pain forgotten for a moment when Waverly leans up and presses another gentle kiss to her lips. Now let's get you cleaned up, Waverly says, and gestures for Nicole to sit on the simple wooden pallet covered with a few layers of wool blankets. She gives a small cry of relief when she finds a basic medical supply kit in Nicole's bag. She pulls out strips of cloth and a small bottle of disinfectant solution and gets to work on her wrists first and then her face. She pauses, though, and she sees Nicole's shining, tired eyes. We're truly on our own now, huh? Nicole says slowly, as if she's just realizing it for the first time. Yes, Waverly says, and cups Nicole's bruised jaw gently. Neither verbalize their fear, however, at what's to come when Elder Hardy and Elder Ward find that both of them are gone.
Okay. I'm going to assume that was the end of that sequence. Thank you so much, Like It Matters. That was delightful. I was rapt. My attention was rapt.
That was my
yeah.
dramatic pause at the end.
Oh, was it? Okay. Well, I saw you self-mute, so I was like, oh, okay, they must be finished.
Oh, done.
That was really, really good. I'm excited to read that in
Thanks.
print and also to find out what happens in chapter 14. That's going to be...
Yes, I'm working on it. Thanks so much for doing this. You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Well,
this is so cool.
You're absolutely welcome. And I have to actually credit jeepgrrl because it was her idea that she posted on Twitter. And I went, you know what? That's a great idea. And this is exactly what we're going to do. So thank you, jeepgrrl. I'm sorry I didn't credit you earlier in this evening of readings. But yes, Like It Matters, thank you so much. That was spectacular. I am so looking forward to the next bit. Which brings us to our final reader of this evening. I hope everyone has got their dribble bibs and a change of underpants ready because we're going to have our first and only explicit reading of the evening from the delightful author Boo, also known as Baggerheda. I'm trying to unmute. Do we keep muting each other? Here we go. Hang on. There we go. Okay. I think we were probably tagging back and forth there.
No, apparently I need to click something and wasn't doing it. So
okay.
I'm new to this whole Zoom thing. So yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go?
I think we are. So everyone, brace yourselves. This is going to be quite exciting. Boo, yes. It's all you.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to highlight that, yes, this is explicit fic, and I'd like to set the scene for a bit. Remember when the season 3 promos came out and we had like 1.5 seconds of Nicole Hott in a tie and everybody lost their minds? It was so wonderful. And we, some of us wrote a few fics about that. And I am going to read a section from one of those that I wrote. Prior to this scene, Nicole takes Waverly out for a nice evening, a special evening, and Waverly wants to dress her up for going out, and that dressing up includes a tie. So, some nights, Nicole liked to linger downstairs before getting ready for bed, calm and placid in the comforts of her home. She might read a book or snuggle with Calamity Jane for a while, or maybe watch a little Netflix with Waverly, sitting close and running her fingers through her girlfriend's hair. Tonight was not one of those nights. They found themselves upstairs in Nicole's bedroom a bare minimum amount of time after they'd arrived. Waverly paused a single moment, standing there full of yearning just from the way Nicole's eyes raked over her. And now Nicole was reaching forward, hands on her thighs, rucking up her skirt that she was wearing, the grasp of her palms fiery as they slid over her skin. Baby, Nicole breathed out, barely above a whisper. So much reverence and naked want carried in one simple word that Waverly wanted to climb inside it and live forever. God, Nicole, Waverly whimpered. Are you? Will you? The attraction, the desire between them that had been low-key all night, a little flirty, a little fun. Suddenly it had flared, roared to life like a grass fire, the prairie wind. Waverly felt it sweep through her and set her aglow like sparks flying, leaving her trembling and sighing and with an aching throb between her legs. Holy shit, but she didn't even have words for how much she wanted, how much she needed Nicole. It was as elemental as the air in her lungs, the blood in her veins. She had no choice but to grab on and hold tight with furious greed, her lips meeting Nicole's like the shock of a thunderclap, her entire body jolting in pleasurable response. Nicole bent to her need, matching the fury of her kiss, until they were both panting and helplessly pawing at the clothes still covering them both. You dress me, gasped Nicole, as they finally broke apart for a moment. Now undress me. You know I will, said Waverly roughly. Come here. Nicole's bedroom wasn't large. Waverly didn't have to work hard to maneuver them into place. With her arms wound round Nicole's neck and their mouths sliding slip and heated, it was only a few steps until she'd reached the edge of the bed. Nicole's clever tongue explored, tracing between her lips, and then Waverly threaded her fingers in with the satiny fabric of the tie. She sat, a slow, graceful recline, dragging Nicole down and over her, enjoying the flare of lust that flickered over Nicole's face as she did. You've been wanting to do that for a while, haven't you? Nicole growled. She brought one firm thigh up between Waverly's legs and pressed in, and Waverly groaned with need. The contact was heavenly, and it wasn't nearly enough, and her head had started to spin, her body writhing with want. She ground herself against Nicole's legs, lifting her hips, inviting more. Why do you think I had you wear it? Waverly replied, breathless. Nicole let herself be pulled down the rest of the way, Waverly barely tugging on the necktie to bring their mouths together again in a long, deep kiss. Waverly let go of the tie, and both her hands drifted down to the small of Nicole's back and lower, pulling Nicole's shirt tails loose, slipping her hands under the waistband of Nicole's pants and inside her boxers. Soft cotton stretched delightfully snug, palming over the fine shape of her ass. Waverly squeezed, pulling their bodies close into each other, delighting in the feel of the firm muscles working there, as Nicole's hips rolled and moved with their arousal, growing demanding. But the clothing had to go, like, right away, and in their hurry, they turned things a little rough. Waverly's fingers moved with purpose now, and their hands clashed and bumped, busy stripping each other, buttons and zippers giving way, skin to the cool air. Waverly felt herself becoming frantic, her body blazing and insistent. Off, off, she murmured, pushing Nicole's pants down from her hips. Nicole was matching her, pulling Waverly's blouse off, lifting it up and over her head, then deftly unhooking her bra and pulling it free. Waverly's breast spilled out, immediately caught again as Nicole's hands shaped to the sides of them, and she pressed her face between, then turned to lick and suck and play at the hardening nipples as Waverly arched and groaned underneath the red head. Waverly was most of the way to bear now, thanks to Nicole's efforts, and nimble fingers were twisting under the hem of her panties, drawing them down. Lips traveled down the length of her torso and back up, Nicole's questing mouth painting electric trails of desire across the expanse of her skin. She came up again to nuzzle under Waverly's jaw, her tongue broad and wet and warm as she pressed rough kisses to Waverly's throat. How, came Nicole's question, drifting to Waverly's ears, sweet like honey, but also urgent, the thing she almost always asked, the rumble of it sliding heated against her skin, just as Nicole's lips were doing, making Waverly clench, sizzling with need. Strong hands were moving all over her, skin to skin, Waverly giving over and letting herself be swept into the irresistible current of their arousal, letting it take her where it would. Please, she begged, gasping softly, I want you. I want to touch you. It wasn't until Nicole had kicked off her pants and undershorts and had risen to her knees to finally tug loose the necktie still hanging at her neck that Waverly saw her chance and took it. Her hand slid down to ride against the curves of Nicole's hips, then one traveled lower, finding damp red curls and slick heat. Thing inside as Nicole finally undid the last button of her dress shirt and shucked it away. Ah, Nicole breathed out, dropping the shirt off the side of the bed. Waverly felt the ripple of pleasure pass through both their bodies, the shockwave echoing the thud of her momentarily stealing the breath from her lungs. And she could no longer wait, not 1 second more. She needed to make Nicole come, and hard. Okay, she asked, ragged, if Nicole wanted her hand, if Nicole wanted her mouth, or something else, anything else, she would do it. Okay, growled Nicole, and Waverly pressed in with 2 fingers, a long, deep stroke. God, it was the most delicious thing ever to watch Nicole like that, to see her tremble and arch, to see her whole body shudder with need, unleashed. She was just so beautiful, so much power in her as she began taking her pleasure this way, pale skin shining and flushy, her body rising as she rode Waverly's hand. Her torso rolled with the work of it, the rise and fall, and then Nicole pitched forward some, down to her hands above Waverly, and now it was easier. Waverly could reach exactly how she wanted. She threw herself into the dance in earnest, determined in her thrust, awash in the awe and ecstatic wonder of Nicole rippling hot and wet and silk against her fingers. So wet, she groaned, low and hoarse. You're so fucking wet. Waverly could feel her own wetness as well, painting wide and slick against Nicole's naked thigh, pressed hard against her core, her hips grinding in mindless need. She curled her fingers, pushing forward as she delved, riding high on Nicole's pleasured sighs and moans in response. Is this good? She husked out. Good. You're gonna make me, Nicole said, trailing off as her back bent and her found into Waverly's hair. She brought her forehead to rest against Waverly's, her red hair falling loose and curtaining both their faces. Waverly drank in the closeness. Of all the fantastic ways Nicole came, she thought, this might be her favorite, face to face and breathing each other in, the intimacy unbearable. Nicole was crying out now, words and syllables falling from her mouth to Waverly's, the yes, ah, yes, yes, a river of pleasure flowing endlessly between them. And as she broke apart and sailed free, shouting and clenching down on Waverly's fingers, the force of her orgasm was enough to carry Waverly along as well, thighs clamping down on Nicole's. Waverly arched, every muscle pulling tight, and fell away, her own joyful shout, mixing into the sweet tumbled noises that filled the room. That's it.
Damn, that was hot.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us this evening, Boo.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us all today. I will be pretentious and speak for all the authors tonight and say this was fucking wonderful. Thank you so much.
This was pretty fucking wonderful. I completely agree, and I'm so excited to do this again on Friday with a whole slate of other authors reading their work. So be sure to keep an eye on the EFA Twitter feed for that link. Please join us again on Friday so that you can tune in and hear everybody else read their works. And again, as I'm saying, this is going to become a thing. It's going to become a thing that EFA will do. And we'll figure out a schedule for a frequency and all that jazz. And I'm very excited to carry this forward. Thank you again so much for joining us to listen to these fantastic authors read. Thank you, authors, for fantastically reading. And I look forward to doing this all again. Everyone have a fantastic evening. And remember, read more fic.